My name is Léonce. I was born and raised in Rwanda, and I was a refugee for 3 years in Congo, and I'm now living and working in the US since 2015. I'm the executive director of Torture, Abolition, and Survivor Support Coalition, a very long name, but we call it TASSC. And TASSC was founded in 1998 by Sister Diana Ortiz, who recently died, unfortunately, a torture survivor herself. She was tortured in Guatemala, and when she came back to US as a torture survivor, she wanted to speak out about what happened to her, and she wanted people who tortured her to be sanctioned, and she wanted the world to know what happened to her, because she knew there are other people who, like her, were tortured but don't have the platform to speak out. Sister Diana did a hunger strike in front of the White House for 2 weeks. She met the president at that time. She did many activities to highlight the torture that was happening in Guatemala, but also around the world as a survivor. So that's how TASSC started, with a few other survivors. I think 5 of them were all women. They started TASSC to help survivors to speak out against torture from around the world. So since then, TASSC has adopted that the practice of making the bridge for survivors to speak out, to tell their stories, in order to change the policies related to the practice of torture and the culture of impunity happening around the world for the torturers. And since then, TASSC has, all the executive directors for TASSC have been survivors, because the Sister Diana believed that they understand what is in the mind of a survivor, and what is, that the survivors are the masters of their experience. Half of our board are survivors, so they're involved in the decisions that we make at TASSC regarding the services that we provide, but also the subject of advocacy. I was asked to talk about the pros and cons of, having survivors speaking out, telling their stories, advocating. I will start by the cons. When you ask a survivor to tell their story, it's not a piece of cake. It's not like you're asking them to tell you how was their last vacation. That's not the way it is. They are going to tell their story. It's a painful story all the time. It's a painful story, and that story, people have to understand how courageous it is for survivors to tell their story. And that may bring back the memories of what happened to them, the experience of torture. Depending on the situation, especially in a political situation, by telling their story, a survivor can reveal their identity and obviously maybe put their families back in their countries in danger. They can also jeopardize their legal process if they are asking for asylum, if the story they're telling is not exactly how it's written in the asylum document. However, the advantage of telling their story is much, much bigger than those downsides. And if well managed, those downsides actually can come down to, very small compared to what it can do to tell their stories. The first, survivors, as I said before, they are the masters of their own experience. There is no one who can tell a story of a survivor like the survivor themselves. They went through the experience, however small or big that experience was. It is their experience, and they know it, and they know how they feel about it. So I think that's one of the pros of getting survivors to advocate for issues around torture and to tell their stories. The other thing that I've seen is that 70% of the survivors that come to TASSC they were advocates back in their countries. They were advocates, they were whistleblowers, they were journalists, they were activists, human rights defenders. And actually, the majority of them were tortured because of being activists, of speaking out against what is happening in their countries. So that's why they were tortured. So having these individuals continue to advocate, it is only natural to do so, because that's what they've been doing, that's what they were tortured for, and they want to continue to do that, because in that way, if they continue to do that, because they have been told by their torturers that they will no longer be able to talk, they will no longer be able to advocate. That's why they were tortured, they were being silenced. So as soon as they get an opportunity, as soon as your center or yourself give them an opportunity to advocate, to talk about what happened to them, and to talk about the changes that they need, they will jump on that opportunity, because they want to continue to speak out, because they were told that they would never speak against their government or against their torturers. So I think once we make that bridge and prepare them to advocate for themselves and for the change, they will jump on the opportunity. Also, another thing is that we do a lot of research on torture, what's happening in different countries. We have statistics, but a survivor story brings a lot. It brings a irreplaceable subject to the conversation. Either if you're talking to policymakers or educating the community, the survivor's story brings that irreplaceable subject to the conversation. So it is always important to get the survivors to bring that human side of the story, of the statistics, of the research. So the survivor story will bring that to the conversation. Also, I think 2 years ago, we did a small research with the survivors, asking them why they're doing advocacy. Actually, it was surprising. Most of them, they didn't even talk about themselves. They said, we're doing this so that our colleagues back home, journalists, advocate, activists, so that our colleague could continue to advocate safely. We are doing this so that our families back home could live a peaceable life without anyone harassing them or torturing them. We are doing this so that people who tortured us and people who are continuing to torture people could be brought to justice. So most of the time, they're really, really worried about people who are back home, people who are still doing activism. They want them to be free to continue to speak out. So that was something that was very helpful. It gave us confidence to continue to support survivors who want to speak out and tell their stories. During that research also, we managed to realize that it also helps with their mental health as they continue to do what they like to do. It has improved their mental status, how they feel about themselves. They feel like they're useful again. They can influence the policy. So from that, we thought that this is also something that we could continue to promote, so that survivors back home who want to continue to speak out could use that actually to do something.
I will now share the process of working with torture survivors in advocacy. The first step is to identify survivors who may be good candidates to share their story and their hopes for the future. These are clients who have developed crucial trigger and coping skills that help them navigate everyday's ups and downs. Ideally, they are no longer symptomatic and/or have developed effective self-regulation strategies that would help them throughout the process. Most importantly, they are not currently experiencing suicidal ideation. The second step is to approach those survivors while giving them agency over their decision to embark in advocacy, as well as the story they want to share. Once we agree on the time, the survivor and I discuss the campaign and how they want to be a part of it. The survivor writes his or her story, and we go over it together. We practice reading it as they would in front of congressional officials. It's important to reassure them that they have complete control over confidentiality. They can share their real name or keep it anonymous by using a pseudonym. Some feel empowered by giving their name, while others prefer to refrain from doing so for fear of retaliation on their family at home or on themselves here. Therapeutic skills will come into play in the readout, as well as during the formal meeting and afterwards as we debrief. Skills like actively listening, giving them the space and silence, empathizing, validating and normalizing their thoughts and feelings, honoring their pain, de-escalating, praising them, and reflecting on their journey with them are all skills that will be an asset as they are integrated into advocacy. Clients will feel safe. Their advocacy is impactful in the system at large. The policymakers are visibly touched by the presence and testimonies of the survivors. Rather than words on a paper, they hear the firsthand accounts by people who have lived it, and they are moved to meaningful action. We see that there's traction at the moment in our campaign for affirmative asylum seekers and other torture survivors, and this is because of the courage of the survivors. To testify in congressional meetings is empowering to them. They are taking back control of their life. In IRCT's words, we believe that survivors who can and want to should be the principal agents in their own healing journey, and that their experiences of overcoming often unimaginable hardship can serve to improve rehabilitation services for themselves and others. I truly believe in its message that they encourage for survivors to take ownership of their rehabilitation. Mental health workers can play an essential role in helping survivors take back control of their life. Advocacy helps them get their fighting spirit back and gives them hope. Let's help them rebuild hope and recover. For years in my work as a psychotherapist, I have witnessed the heartache and anxiety that clients waiting for their asylum interviews experience. They are in asylum limbo. A lot of them have filed for asylum within a year of entering the US after they fled their country. And now after 5, 6, or even 7 or 8 years, they're still waiting with no end in sight. Torture is used to dehumanize and destroy the victim's agency and personality in an effort to reach the perpetrator's goal. In short, the purpose of torture is ultimately to take the victim's control and autonomy away. The recovery of these survivors is dependent on rebuilding hope, and that recovery comes mostly after the individual feels safe and secure. Asylum seekers are unable to feel secure and safe until they are essentially granted asylum. Torture survivors feel powerless after having had their agency or control taken away. They now feel powerless in this asylum process. So this is where advocacy comes into play. We want to give that control back to survivors. This is also where it can get uncomfortable for therapists. Through our formal training, we are often hesitant to encourage clients to take part in certain projects or programs for fear that our clients will feel forced into it. The power differential is ingrained in us, and we are well aware of it when we treat clients. We make every effort not to impose our will or take the lead in the treatment. The reluctance among mental health workers to encourage clients to advocate for larger causes is largely because of that power imbalance and its implications. However, what we too often overlook is that allowing them and encouraging them even to engage in causes can be tremendously healing in their journey to recover. It is giving them their control back. They are empowered by their actions, by their courage. Many of them were activists in their home country, as you will hear from them, and the causes they believed in fueled their fire. They are activists at heart, and that's where they shine again. That is what I have witnessed with clients engaged in advocacy.
My name is Aymen Tabir. I'm honored to be the Executive Director for TASSC International. I'm new to TASSC, but I'm a survivor from Sudan. And this is where TASSC is very unique in its model in different ways, in the leadership, in the model for advocacy and survivor engagement. I will start with my personal story. I was a student leader at Byimana University in Sudan, and I was a human rights activist back in the days. In 1991, when I was active in engagement in student movement and human rights, I was detained with my brothers and cousins from home in 1991. I was tortured for 2 weeks by agents of the regime of Omar al-Bashir at that time. He was the dictator of Sudan, who was later accused by the International Criminal Court, ICC, for crimes against humanity and war crimes and genocide in the Darfur region in Sudan. I left Sudan in 1996. I was always interested in standing up for human rights in my country and for improving the economic situation of the people of Sudan and around the world. I believe in human rights and equality. As a torture survivor myself, I realized that speaking out about my experience could help me heal from what I've been through. It was a terrible experience for me. I lost my brother in 2010 due to what he suffered during his 6 months detention and torture back in Sudan. I understand why is it important for TASSC survivor to testify about what happened to them, about what's happening in their country and to the others. It can help them heal. It is part of the healing process when you talk about it, when you share it with others, and when you connect with others who has been through what you have, they understand you more. This is why I stand as an executive director for TASSC and as an advocate for myself, for other survivors to get involved, to open and give the opportunity and make it possible for everyone to come here and train. Whenever I speak about my own experience, it reminds me that I have the resilience to overcome what I have been through. So I want the others to do the same. This is why I support the advocacy program, and that I can help also prevent others from suffering like I did, not here or in Africa, but globally.